This is episode 4. Today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which is a great movie. But first, what have you been up to, Elmer?
Well, I just wanted to come on with this one right out of the gate and apologize for last week. We were originally supposed to do this episode,
Mm.
but right before we here in Minnesota got our first really big snowfall of the season last Saturday night, I decided I wanted to get all my yard work done at my house. And immediately I realized I should have worn a dust mask or something because I immediately had an allergy attack come Sunday morning.
Oh man.
So I had to sadly message Levy here early in the morning and go, unfortunately, man, I can't make it. Both myself and my dog were sick at the time, so we basically had to call her quits for the day, even after scheduling and planning out everything. However, I did get my comeuppance, my penance for it. I went and thought to myself, oh, hey, I'll just have some nice, refreshing breakfast. Myself a bowl of bran flakes with the what was it, the half gallon of milk we had in the fridge. Ate my flakes and thought to myself, wow, this tastes even creamier than I remember. Now, granted, I'm not a big milk fan. I don't drink a lot of dairy. I don't eat a lot of dairy. So I thought, oh, this tastes really creamy. Must be because I've just not had milk for a while. And then on Thursday, the missus is cleaning out the fridge and goes, oh, would you look at that? The milk has been expired since the 15th of November.
Oh.
I think I made my penance for missing last week, so my
Oh.
apologies, everybody.
That's all right, man. Well, after that, how was your week? What did you do?
Pretty much the entirety of my week consisted of me working, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, me too. But man, what did I do? The new Sonic trailer dropped.
That it did.
That was awesome. I'm very excited. Plus, I don't know if you heard about Sonic Frontiers, but it's been a rumor for a while, but now it's confirmed. Open world Sonic game. So
Hmm.
I'm really excited about that one. Um,
Grand Theft Sonic. Nice.
yeah, and what else did I do? My car was broken into, which was super fun. I got in my car to go to work one morning and my stuff was everywhere. They dumped cig butts all over my seats and everything. It was not fun, but I don't think they took anything. So,
So wait, they unlocked it without breaking the windows or anything.
yeah, nothing like they didn't like break in. I don't know how they got in.
They
Even
get oh,
even if I forget to lock it, it automatically locks itself. So I'm not sure how, but yeah, it was.
so they broke in by unlocking it. They went in there, and then I'm guessing theoretically, potentially, they had to relock it on their way out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but that was super fun. Um, Other than that, yeah, just like work and I've been watching the new season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Very good. I'm really pleased with it. So
Oh,
yeah.
that reminds me. Actually, I was on the most recent episode of Thor's Hour of Thunder. A good friend of ours who runs that program.
Oh yeah.
I was on that episode last week where we talked about the John Waters classic Serial Mom, where you get to see the voice of Jessica Rabbit kill people in a suburban neighborhood of Baltimore. So no shit eating, so a little outside of John Waters' normal wheelhouse, but still a funny movie.
Yeah, those guys are great. Uh, I should go back on one of their podcasts soon here. Um,
Dr. Thor, I know he's itching to have you back on.
yeah, if you don't know Thor's Hour of Thunder, should check them out. So anyway, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. So obviously the movie is based on Final Fantasy VII and not any of the other Final Fantasies, but if you've never played Final Fantasy VII, it was a game released by Square Enix in 1997. A lot of people say it's the best Final Fantasy, and a lot of people say it's the best RPG of all time. So, a lot of people really like this game. Personally, I love it. I played it a lot when I was a kid. Like my sisters and I would play Final Fantasy And I do love 7, but I think 9 is my favorite, and I know that's a very controversial statement, but man, yeah, I just love Final Fantasy. So, um yeah, and also Final Fantasy 14 is what I'm getting back into now, so pray for me. um but yeah, and then so there was also the Final Fantasy 7 remake that came out last year, and it kind of gets mixed reviews from Final Fantasy 7 fans, but I really liked it.
My biggest gripe about that though is they cut out the cross-dressing level, and I'm just like, well, why would I even want to pick up the game anyway?
They didn't cut that out.
Oh, they didn't? I thought they
No,
did.
no, that's in the game.
Woo!
That's the best part of the remake so far. Um, but yeah, a lot of people didn't like the remake because they like changed a little bit with the story and like put in these characters that like the whole purpose of their existence is to like keep people on track of the original story. So it was kind of cheesy, but I kind of liked it. So anyway, yeah, back to the original one. So in August 1995, a large CG convention called SIGGRAPH was held in LA, and for that, Square Enix created a interactive demo to play at the show, and it focused on battle scenes that were real time and polygon based. And that kind of like became the seed of Final Fantasy VII, and this is when they decided to make the game entirely CG and 3D, which was like huge because I think it was like the first 3D game on the PlayStation, or maybe at all. I can't remember that one. Um, so they came up with the idea to like eliminate the connection between like movies and like the playing field. So they really wanted it, because it was 3D, to be like really immersive. Um, so they wanted to do this without like blacking out the screen and having like really obvious like scene changing. Um, and what they did was to get the game to look so good for being like the first 3D game they ever did, was they'd like play a CG scene that they rendered, and then they'd like freeze it at a certain point, and then let the characters walk around that frozen image. So it was like really clever, and like because they did it that way, like it looked surprisingly high quality because you just had people walking on like pre-rendered video background basically. Um, so it was really cool, and they wanted to like blend the experience of films into game, which is why they had a lot of like cutscenes and cinematics and stuff like that. So um, they were really hoping that the experience would surpass like film, like 3D games were going to be so immersive that instead of going to the movie theater, people would just be playing these games. Um, so this is the first time that Square Enix required an art department, just because of the large number of CG artists they need to hire. They ended up having to get like a bunch of new people from outside of the business, and yeah, so they had, what was it? I think I have it here somewhere. Like how many people they hired? It was like 100 and something. Um, and this was also the first game to ever make the transition from 2D to 3D, which was, yeah, like this game just like was a lot of firsts. So
I said this game beat out or Final Fantasy VII beat Bugsy, or sorry, Bubsy,
Bubsy.
Bubsy, Earthworm Jim, and Mario 64 to the table.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Earthworm Jim was on the Genesis, so Earthworm Jim and Bubsy were both before Final Fantasy. But as far as 3D, yeah, as far as 3D titles that were also 2D,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they Final Fantasy was the first. Yep.
Okay, so it beat those three because I know those were like the big three that everyone's just like, oh, that they made the big jump kind of thing. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, wanted to with the game they wanted to analyze life, but in like a logical or mathematical way. Um, and the this is the first time they actually had that theme in a Final Fantasy game. I know they've done it since, but the director Yoshi, he joined Square when Final Fantasy V was starting development, and what he originally wanted to do was become a director of film, but he didn't think that he would really make it like in Tokyo as a director. So he joined Square, and the so for Final Fantasy V, uh man, my notes are a little scattered. Sorry about that. The previous versions of Final Fantasy could be called like puppet shows compared to Final Fantasy VII, just because like the 3D modeling and the film like feel, which he really did a good job of directing. I think like it really shows how much he wanted it to be like a movie. He also filled it with like complicated effects and like various camera angles during like dialogue scenes and stuff, which really made it feel cinematic even when it wasn't like a cutscene. His study of cinematography and experience with film definitely contributed a lot to the game, and they would use two different types of CG like simultaneously. Like I was talking about before, they'd have like the pre-rendered video CG on top of like the PlayStation rendering the polygons. It was really cool. So because of all that complexity and large image data, um, the game kind of had to use CD-ROM technology. Like before this, Final Fantasy was pretty much only a Nintendo thing, coming out on cartridges. But like this game was huge, and they really couldn't put it on cartridges without cutting out a lot of the game. So like they really had an ambitious project, and it kind of forced them to break their contract that they had with Nintendo, which kind of got them into a little bit of trouble. Um, yeah, their dev team um, was very expensive and required a high quality staff of around 100 game developers. That was it. It was one of the largest dev teams in history. Um, so yeah, they were making it on the PlayStation because it was like the only CD based console that was doing 3D. And so they really didn't have many restrictions because the PlayStation One, I mean, compared to what came before it was ridiculous.
Well, you know about the history of the PlayStation itself, though, how Nintendo basically had their fingers in that until they decided to pull the
Oh
plug.
yeah, yeah. It was gonna be the Super Nintendo PlayStation, CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo. But yeah, Nintendo pulled out, and then I, kind of out of spite, just started making game consoles. Um, so then other hardware capabilities of the PlayStation really allowed them to flesh out the soundtrack as well, with a lot of different music and effects. So, like compared to the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo could play 8 different sounds at a time. So it had 8 sound channels, and the PlayStation allowed up to 24 sound channels, like all wave channels. So they would basically just reserve like 8 sound channels for sound effects and whatever else, and then the other, what is that, 16 was just all for music. So the soundtrack like bops pretty hard. Like it's a very memorable soundtrack.
I swear the opening theme for the game when like when you first put the disc in and it's going like the main login screen or whatnot or load up screen. I swear that's like my constant like screensaver song in my head. If I'm just sitting there, just kind of sitting there ambient, just
Yeah, it's like yeah, the Final Fantasy menu music, or like the Legend of Zelda menu music, are, like the easiest, like easily most, my gosh, how can I talk easily, the most memorable like earworm type menu music. um so yeah, so since they were previously on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo and now moving to the PlayStation, they like had some problems after releasing Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo. Um, like they were really worried that the game would like lag behind if they released it for Nintendo, just because of like the different restrictions on it. And they originally planned on releasing it for the N64, but then the PlayStation came with their CD-ROMs, their fancy technology. Um, but not just the CD-ROMs. The PlayStation could also render almost double the amount of polygons as the N64, so it's kind of a no-brainer. They actually met with Nintendo to try and like come up with solutions to keep working with them, but it was actually like really met from Nintendo just like, no, figure it out. We don't want to work, we don't want to work around these issues. So yeah, buy the PlayStation. See ya. Like, um, yeah. So Nobuo Uematsu composed the music. Like I was talking about all those crazy sound channels. It's like the most memorable, I think, soundtrack of like all the Final Fantasies. Um, he's considered to be like the best Final Fantasy composer. The music really had a unique feel that no other RPGs had at the time. He intentionally eliminated like up tempo type music that like gets you ready for a journey. And he wanted to use styles of music to make you feel insecure, or to express different feels of the various settings in the game. But I think it really comes across well. Like I don't know, I'm sure you've heard some of it at some point. Um, but yeah, for Umatsu, the soundtrack for the game was like an experiment for him just to like see what he could do. Um,
When we kind of brought it up when we were rewatching the movie recently with One Wing Angel with that song coming on there,
oh
it's
yeah,
almost like something out of like uh oh, is it Howard Glass? Composer, famous composer, guy who did like the original Candyman theme and stuff like that, or Karana Squatzy, which that feels like it should be a track on Karana Squatzy, actually, with how bombastic and just big and sort of epic it is. And it still is probably, it is definitely outside of maybe the Gladiator from Doom Eternal, like my favorite like boss music sound actually.
yeah. One Winged Angel, like I'm sure we'll talk about it later too, but like that song rocks. Like I think they put that in a Guitar Hero game. I really do. I think so. Um, but yeah, like before Final Fantasy, like in previous games, there was like really a big difference between like the gameplay and then like the special effects scenes where like they would have a special like splash screen away from the normal game to show off like a little maybe animation of something happening um where this kind of just like blended it all. um and because the norm before was to have like this like weird split of like effects and gameplay, once this was eliminated, people kind of like really noticed, um like these, like what I'm talking about. It's really noticeable like in the summons of the game, like where you get a whole thing that like a 3D model comes down into the battlefield. Like it's this whole animation that's like part of the battle, where before it would just kind of be like, yeah, like almost like a GIF plays. Um, so it like, yeah, it was really the first for a lot of things, and it did it very well, and a lot of people liked it. If you're not too familiar with Final Fantasy, it's like the steampunk Final Fantasy. So everything's like dark, and like there's a lot of like metal and leather and sunglasses.
It's
um
like the Matrix before the Matrix.
yeah, like honestly kind of like they actually envisioned it as like a detective type game, like a Detective in the Rain. um but then they gave it like a fantasy plot.
I always felt that Detective Pikachu needed more buckles, you know,
Buckles and leather.
buckles, leather, and like spiked up hair. Perfect.
Yeah, so they wanted to move away from the typical RPG setting of like, oh, there's a bad guy in the castle, he captured the princess, type thing. So they made the bad guy the head of a corporation in an office building. And
Then the princess gets shish kebab halfway through the game.
and before you ask, no, it was not inspired by Blade Runner.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about that. The director was asked, and he was like, "No, I'm not really a big fan." You know.
He's Japanese. The Japanese are obsessed with Blade Runner. I call bullshit.
Much of the design was actually taken from structures in Tokyo. The Shinra building, you can actually find pictures of this. I wish I had them prepared. But the Shinra building was based on the Warship building that's pretty much across the street from the Square Enix headquarters. Like it looks like exactly like the front of it. It's crazy. While designing the city of Midgar, the designer felt like something was off about the design, but he was like on a deadline and he already handed like his design of the city to the CG team. And later that night, he had a friend over and they were eating pizza. And he was like looking at the pizza and he's like, "That's it. That's the layout for the city." Like I'm not joking. And so he like quick that night like drew up a new like design of the city for like the like the dome, like pizza dome thing on top with like the slums underneath. Um and like the rendering team that like reluctantly like accepted the changes, but they were only like 20 days away from like a deadline to release a commercial.
Oh.
So like yeah, it was crunch time basically.
Jesus, that's like if making or Cyberpunk 2077, they go, fuck it, we're making the city shaped like a hoagie. Actually, I think that is kind of how that game did come out.
I think it ended up working out though. Like I'd never really like I would have never guessed it was inspired by actually a pizza, but yeah, and then the game did like gangbusters. Obviously, it's Final Fantasy, so
Refresh me, was it one of the debut titles, or at least pretty close to it for the PlayStation, or no?
yeah, it was very early on in the PlayStation. Because the PlayStation came out in '95, this came out in '97, so it's pretty early on. And what was it? It made it into the PlayStation Greatest Hits collection, which is actually the copy I have. Unfortunately, it's the Greatest Hits one, but
Same time, trying to find an original one, I'm guessing is probably not the easiest in the world.
I mean, it's probably not terrible. Final Fantasy always produced a lot of physical copies of their games, and I mean, it might be right around that time for like disc rot to set in, which is where discs will actually like the data will just rot off due to old age. But yeah, my copy still works great. So you know, yeah, I don't know. If, I know you said you've like know a lot about the game or some about the game, but I don't know if you've ever played it.
I have. We were talking about that. He goes, "Yeah, did you ever play the game?" I said, "I did play the game," and he gets excited. He goes, "Okay, then you should pretty much know at least what some is going on." And then that's when I went, "I may have failed to mention it was about 20 years ago I played the game." So yeah, that didn't help out too much, but I can still remember a little bit here and there. After you decided to do the title, I may have gone back and watched a few episodes of Death Battle with Cloud and Sephiroth being part of it.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things where when I was kind of coming up with the script for this one, it was like, do I even begin to talk about the plot of the game? Because like that could take so long. But a lot of it's like necessary knowledge for the movie. So
Let's put it this way, folks. I've been looking over his shoulder the entire time here at his script that he's reciting, pretty much from articles and stuff like that. This is more research and writing I've seen him put work into, and I went to high school with this son of a bitch.
Yeah, I have like almost 4 pages here.
Space 12-point font.
I think it's 11 point, but
oh, you cheating bastard! No.
Yeah, no, I did a lot of research on this. I actually didn't. I had 2 weeks to research, and I actually still didn't get as much data as I could have. But I've already been talking for over a half hour, I think. So, move on to the movie.
Well, I hate to say it this way, but before we can talk about Advent Children, we got to talk about its predecessor.
Oh God, I knew this was coming.
Which we're still up in the air whether or not we're going to talk about Spirits Within, but you can't really talk about Spirits Within unless we talk about this. So, with Spirits Within, when that movie came out, Square had actually just set up in Honolulu this gigantic, at least for pretty much a video game company, a gigantic animation studio there called Square Pictures. And their plan was that they were going to release this new movie under the Final Fantasy banner, and that would be kind of their foot in the door for it.
Which also, sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
Opening an animation studio in Hawaii? Are they stupid?
Well, I'll give them one thing on it. It's between Japan and California,
I suppose.
so it's kind of a nice little stop-off point, I guess. But at the same time, it's like one of the most isolated island chains in the world in terms of development and everything. And if memory serves correct, I think it still took them into the mid 2000s for them to receive like decent enough high-speed internet. So it's like, yeah, maybe not the best idea, but anyway, they decided to press on, and they thought, okay, our first film, it's like, what are we going to do? We're name brand worldwide, our Final Fantasy series. And I know that growing up, my cousin, who was a big fan of it, who actually turned me on to Final Fantasy VII, was saying, oh, hey, maybe it's going to be like a prequel or something like that to Final Fantasy VII. It is not a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. It is its own thing.
It really has nothing to do with Final Fantasy at all.
Let's put it this way. The design and tone of the movie is closer to frickin' Halo than it is to Final Fantasy. I mean, granted, it does have an all-star cast. It has a beautiful, and I will say beautiful art design to it. It still looks good to this day. Funnily enough, the character of Aki, the main character from it, was listed on VHM's 100 Hottest Women of the Year.
Yep.
The first time they've ever used an actual, well, pretty much a completely fictional something that doesn't exist.
It wasn't based on a real person's face. Yeah, that movie, like, gosh, what was it? They only put Final Fantasy in the name because it was the company behind it. It wasn't. There was a bad choice. If they would have called it something that didn't have Final Fantasy in it, it might not have done better, but people wouldn't have ridiculed it so hard, I think.
Even if they would have called it The Spirits Within, that doesn't make any damn sense, because let's put it this way, if you've seen the movie, it's a spoiler, it's about alien ghost ripping. It's basically, it's if you turned Scientology into a horror film, is the best way of describing what it is.
So Scientology?
Yeah, no, actually that would have been better, like, Lord Xenu's Electronic Boogaloo or something like that. Probably would have been a better title for it. But that movie, they estimate between a combination. I'm sorry that I keep bouncing my foot this entire time.
That's okay.
They estimate actually that it lost them $98 million. And up until the release by Disney, of all people, which that'll come into play a little bit later here too, until the release of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, it was the most expensive video game movie ever made.
Yep.
So if you ever wonder why Uwe Boll films look like they cost about $20, you can thank Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within for that one. But yeah, they $98 million loss at the box office. And the last thing that actual Square Pictures worked on before they folded them away, they basically shut down the entire Honolulu sector. They worked on the last flight of the Osiris for the Animatrix, which was supposed to be kind of like a bridging film for the Animatrix, as well as just get people hyped for the last two Matrix films. Speaking of which, what's coming out in a few weeks here? But they put that before a movie that no one remembers except for the shitweasels, a movie called Dreamcatcher, based off of probably the worst book Stephen King ever wrote.
But to be fair, the Animatrix is like pretty damn good.
It is. No, the Animatrix is fantastic.
Yeah.
They've got art designs and stories by all different great directors. And Last Flight of the Osiris is probably one of the best ones in that even. I mean, it's really short, but it's beautiful. It's fantastic. But no, they just thought, oh, hey, we might be able to recoup a little bit of money if we put this before Dreamcatcher, share a little bit of those profits. And then Dreamcatcher it didn't have a prayer. It was a nightmare for that movie.
So
we're to go into it then, where Advent Children here kind of comes into play. During the early to mid 2000s, Square was working with licensing out some material from Disney, of all people. So funny how Disney kind of rolls its way back in.
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom
Anyone?
Hearts.
Yeah.
The people who did the actual design or the cutscene work and stuff like that later went on to be the actual animation directors and then also director for Final Fantasy VII here, Advent Children. And originally, this was supposed to be a 20-minute short.
It's over 2 hours long.
We watched the ultimate cut of it, which originally it was 101 hours. Apparently, the director's cut, which we watched, added 25 minutes to it. So the director's cut added the amount of footage that was supposed to be the length of the original short.
You said 101 hours?
Oh, sorry, 101 minutes. Apologies.
I was
My
like,
apologies.
what?
101 minutes, I meant to say. I was going to say hour and 41 minutes. But, yep, nope, it was 2 hours and 7 minutes we got to sit there for. And we're just like, wait, how long is this movie? And I got to pee? But, no, and then kind of going into it, they got a lot of the people who had been doing the voices for the Final Fantasy characters in the Kingdom Hearts games and stuff like that. And which funnily enough, we found out that Evan Rachel Wood, who is now the voice of Tifa, is actually a native and actually grew up not too far away from where we are currently sitting right here. So that was kind of a neat little tidbit to find out. But for this movie though, one of my favorite things is the actual animation directors for it when they said, "Okay, we're gonna make a full length film." They're like, "Well, we know absolutely nothing about filmmaking." And they said, just treat the whole movie like it's a giant cutscene, and it makes all the sense in the world now. It really does.
Yeah.
Because to quote Roger Corman, the great Roger Corman, B movie king Roger Corman, there ain't a whole lot of plot to get in the way of this movie. Okay, maybe not. There's a whole lot of plot, but they just brush by that. They just go, screw it, keep moving.
Yeah, like it takes place after the events of the game, but then it expects you to know the events of the game. Like, I think the first couple times I saw this movie as a kid, I still hadn't beaten the game yet, and it was just confusing as all hell. Like, there's a lot of plot that they're referring to that you just don't know, and they'll kind of like try to really quick squeeze into like a 10-second explanation of like Genova, for example, but it really doesn't. I mean, I don't know how you feel not knowing the whole story of Final Fantasy VII, but if I didn't know the story, I don't think it would really hit home with me.
They were able to kind of pepper in enough that, I mean, I know I've seen the ending before. I think I played the ending actually when you finally defeated Sephiroth and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew enough of it that I kind of understood what was going on, and I kind of understood where it was coming from in this film. Which I think in a way the direction they did take it, I did kind of prefer. So many times in different games, you save the world, you have this ultimate final showdown and you destroy the bad guy, and it just like levels an entire city or levels an entire, half a continent pretty much. This picks up like he was saying 2 years afterward, and it looks like you're in the slums of frickin' Chernobyl or something like that.
Yeah.
People are dying of cancer, I should say, or some sort of disease that's being brought on because of fallout and the lack, or whatever. Not spoil too much, but people are dying just because of after effects of what happened and stuff like that. I think adding that sense of like forebodingness and people talking about how, this is in some ways this is kind of the fault of the heroes in a way, and the heroes kind of have to go into a little bit of hiding. I think that's kind of a neat little spin to put on it.
Yeah, it's one thing where I took notes of like specific beats on the movie just to talk about in case someone has seen this and like me the first couple times I watched it like didn't really understand the plot they were setting up. So hopefully I can clear some of that up for anyone who's listening who might not really understand it. But yeah, basically what Elmer said, like it's about like, oh yeah, they're still trying to clean up after, the events of the game, and it's kind of a rough start to the movie, but once they get far enough in, and it's more fight scenes and stuff, it gets a lot better. So yeah, it starts with like a backstory on like the Mako energy, which the Shinra was like, killing the planet by creating this Mako energy to power all their fancy steampunk technology. Um so after Cloud in the game like defeats the Shinra company, kills Sephiroth, everything starts going back to normal, but the Sephiroth has genes from a calamity that fell from the sky called Genova. A lot of the people in this game or in the movie will refer to Genova as Mother. So when Mother is gotten rid of, um, some of her genetic makeup, I guess, makes it into like the life stream of the planet, and it starts like, yeah, infecting people, where it's like some kind of like a cancer or something. It just like slowly rots you away. Um, but yeah, this it's like a lot of explanation to kind of get through the the events of the movie. Um, so let's see. So there's like all the characters, like the whole gang is here. Specifically like Rufus, Reno, and Rude. Rufus being like the son of the president of Shinra. Now they're like everyone's looking for Genova, for the bits of Mother, for different reasons, but um the son of the Shinra president is looking for it because they want to like help fix the sickness or whatever that it's caused. And then there's another group that's looking for it so that they can like rule the world, like resurrect Sephiroth and like all this stuff. So it's kind of weird that like your enemies from the game are now like on your side. Um
So wait, you're telling me that the glowing Super Ball looking things, those were actually Genova?
no, no. So the glowing orbs were materia.
That's what I thought they were. I'm just like, wait a
Yeah.
minute. If that's Genova, I'm like, wait, I was watching this movie
No,
wrong.
Genova was in that little box.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
So no, it
yeah.
scared me. I'm just like, wait. What?
Yep. And then they kind of add some new characters to the game, like um Denzel, which is one of Marlene's child friends, who also has the geostigma. Um, yeah, there's like a lot of weird things that like don't really matter, but
I guess I didn't think about that till now. To make the parallels of the actual disease, parallel actual like leprosy even more. Huh? How do we make people know that this is supposed to be like leprosy? Call it stigma.
yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah, so Kadaj, he's like the main bad guy in the game. He's apparently has some of Genova's genetic makeup in him, and he's like the one, like him and his gang are the ones like trying to like resurrect Sephiroth and have this like family reunion. Um, so they like convince all these kids in the city that have geostigma, like, oh, come with us, we have a cure, and they like bring them to this big like puddle or like pond, and they like convince them to like drink the weird black water in it to cure them, but it like I guess it's like mind control or something. They basically turn into like childhood like slave soldier things.
Let's put it this way: our little joke title of Advent Children of the Corn is really not that much of a stretch of a joke.
Yeah, like it's pretty accurate. Um, and then like Cloud, just to mention in this movie, he is super moody, super emo, um, and kind of whiny like he is in the games. But he also has stigma, so I guess it's justified. Um, but like Elmer said earlier, a true edge lord. But
Edging the line the entire time, both with his erection, his sharp and pointy blades, and that sharp and pointy hair.
yeah, yeah. So he like comes and tries to fight Kadaj and his gang, like save the kids, but they end up taking them away. Um, Kadaj like takes the kids to the city. They're going to Um, I guess they use the kids as like something to summon Bahamut. I don't know why they had the kids all chained up in the middle of town. I still don't understand what the point of that was. But yeah, they summon Bahamut, which is pretty badass. He's a big ass dude. He shoots like energy balls, and he like just starts destroying shit. Um,
It's like if you cross the flying claw with Godzilla. I mean, it's a big, badass looking like dinosaur dragon thing. Someone's got the zoomies.
um, but yeah, it was like Bahamut's badass. And like because he's attacking the city, it kind of like snaps the kids out of their trance. Um, and then yeah, like this is when everyone shows up, like Yuffie and Barrett and Sid and Kate Sith and like the whole gang. Like now they have an excuse to be in the movie to fight Bahamut. So using the power of friendship, they defy physics and defeat Bahamut.
Water, fire, heart. Your
Yeah,
powers combined. I am.
yeah, they're like running and jumping like off of each other like in midair, and like it's a whole thing.
The power of teamwork, guys.
So yeah, they defeat Bahamut, and during this process, Kadaj ends up finding like the box containing Genova's genetic material. Um, and then a ridiculous motorcycle chase happens. And I bet it's just for the kids who don't understand how motorcycles work. Because they're like spinning around and like sliding sideways and shooting at each other. Like it's ridiculous. Um, they even like drove sideways down like a cliff, like it was Tuesday. You know, like uh. So I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, "That's so cool, that's so cool, dude." But now it's just like, "Oh God."
I was gonna say, I
Trying
think this
too
looked like
hard.
us as 8-year-olds playing with Legos. Just
Playing with Hot Wheels, yeah. Um, yeah. So then, during this motorcycle chase, they're like fighting and stuff. Some point during the fight, the box containing Genova's genetic material is like cracked open, and Kadaj like freaks out. They have a sword fight, Cloud and Kadaj. Um, like towards the end of the fight, Kadaj like opens the box and like gets the genetic material. I don't know if he like eats it or just like absorbs it or rubs it on his face. I don't know what happens, but all of a sudden he's like, "I'm Sephiroth now." Uh, so now is the cool fight where Cloud and Sephiroth fight to the tune of One Winged Angel, which we mentioned before is freaking badass.
the best.
um yeah, it's a really sweet fight. Like Sephiroth's just like cutting off whole chunks of a building with his crazy long, it's like 9 feet or something, katana.
Something huge, ridiculous, overcompensating.
Yeah, it's pretty badass. Cloud gets like his limit break. He's like glowing blue, and he kicks Sephiroth's ass. It's pretty sweet. And then like Sephiroth disappears, and it's Kadaj again. Um, Kadaj like dies in Cloud's arms, and then it rains, and the rain cures the geostigma.
Woo!
Yay!
Here comes the rain
Then Kadaj's goons try to kill Cloud.
Tried to. They shoot that sucker through the heart.
Yeah, they
twice.
shoot him, and then they have all this materia in their arms, so there's like a big explosion, and you're like, "Oh, Cloud's dead." But nope, Spirit Aerith comes to him in the afterlife, and she's like, "I don't have room for you here. Like everyone's calling me mom for some reason. Bye." And then he wakes up in a church. Excuse me.
So with the Messiah complex, is there such thing as an actual like a like a Madre complex or something like that, or a Saint Mary complex or something?
I'm pretty sure you're talking about a mommy kink.
Oh, yeah. The Japanese perfected that a long time ago.
um, yeah. So, yeah, he wakes up in the church. It's super cheesy. He helps all the kids out. But there was a few notes on the movie that I really wanted to talk about. Number one, they all have flip phones, which is pretty badass. And I like in the one scene, there's like, the one guy is fighting Tifa in the church, and she like kicks his ass, and then you hear like the da 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 da, like his ringtone. I was like, that was a very nice touch. Um, Also, everyone in the movie is wearing leather all the time, all leather all the time. They like really like leather.
That would be both hot, smelly, and restrictive. That's why when I finally saw that Tifa was wearing canvas, I'm like, oh, you go, girl. Perfect movement there.
Um, the fight scenes in this movie are really cool. Elmer at one point said something like, "I would like to see this studio like do like a Street Fighter short or something."
I think that'd be really cool. I mean, just pretty much any of those like classic fighting games where they actually have like a power move set where it's something that you can't actually do in real life. Ooh, Darksiders.
Oh yeah,
That would be awesome.
yeah. Give Square Enix the rights to that.
Well, Konami's not doing anything with it. So.
Konami's not really doing anything worthwhile, but
Pachinko machine.
yeah. Another thing I thought was really cool is like when they're fighting Bahamut and Rude's sunglasses get stepped on, and he like looks all disappointed, but then like next second it shows him like putting on a brand new pair of sunglasses. Like
I saw him reach into his coat pocket. I'm like, oh damn, is he getting out some super weapon? No, just another pair, the exact same pair of sunglasses. It's like,
yep.
How many of those you carry on you, man?
Well, if it reminds me of anyone, it's you, Elmer, with your sunglasses all the time for a long time.
I mean, to this day, I think I still carry about 2 pairs on me in my jacket.
This guy wears sunglasses in a movie theater.
To be fair, that was because it was a very bright movie. I don't remember what movie it was. And they were prescription sunglasses, so that's why I wore them. And it was easier to just have 1 pair on you instead of 2.
Speaking of accessories, should we talk about Barrett's super sweet and sexy mesh top?
Last time I saw a man, the last 2 times I've seen a man wear such a sexy mesh top like that was by the Predator in the original Predator film and Samwise Gamgee in 50 First Dates. Sean Astin in that mesh shirt in that movie. It's like, ooh, boy, oh boy.
It was definitely a 2005 design choice.
I think it's also when 50 First Dates came out.
It might be. Yeah, that's all the notes I got on the movie. It, like I said, I watched it a lot as a child, and I don't think the first couple times I got it, but the more I watch it, the more I like it. I definitely don't think it's for everyone.
Oh, by no means.
There's too much plot in the way of just being able to sit down and pop this movie on. But yeah, how about you? Bop or flop, Elmer?
I'm gonna call it a bop. Very much a bop. I sat here most of the time, completely confused as to what the hell was going on, as well as the fact that there weren't any goddamn chocobos. But we'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
But no, I had a lot of fun with this. The animation to it is gorgeous. I'd say 2/3 of the cast are giving it their all.
Yeah, some of the voice, like specifically the voice actor for Rufus, is, I mean, they're not. I don't want to say terrible because I have no voice acting experience, but just not. Yeah, didn't really fit.
As I said to Levy at one point, I'm like, wow, would you look at that? His Cloud's pauldron. You look at it, you can see that it's made of leather and it's got pores on it. And it's got actual marks on it from where it must have been hit in battle or something like that. I said, wow, his pauldron has more character than the voice actor for Cloud in this.
Yeah. For me, it was also a bop. Total bop. Like I love it, but I love most things Final Fantasy. So, like I literally have like my my sugar bowl and spoon for coffee is a Moogle's head. So yeah, I love Final Fantasy. Yeah, definitely a bop. But only if you have prior knowledge. So I definitely recommend it for you guys. Let's see what else. Do we want to close out the show? Give them the Patreon info. So we can be found and supported through Patreon at patreon.com/gamelink. That's where you're gonna find our bonus episodes when we start doing those, and our Q&A content. And if you have questions for us and you're not able to make it to the Q&As, head over to the Patreon or shoot us an email at thegamelinkpod@gmail.com. You can also find the audio versions of the podcast on pretty much everything. And then the video is going to be edited and re-uploaded to YouTube. So, yeah, we're going to start the Q&A. So to you audio listeners, bye.
Oh, and before we go, I just forgot to mention as well, our good friend Levy here, the creator of the podcast, just celebrated the big 3-0 this past week. So, yeah, happy belated birthday on that, bud.
That's what I did this week and forgot about.
The last shred of your childhood died. No.
Yeah. So, yep, 30 now.
Yeah, I'm right behind him, so.
The only thing that's different is that I know I'm old. And before I just felt like I was old. Yeah, anyway. You can catch me on Twitch live. If you're an audio listener, you can catch us Sundays at 5 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/Lebby. See you later.
Yep.
Let's
have a good one, guys.
Get to this Q&A.
Stay safe. Stay safe.